With the war in Ukraine heating up, it looks as if Europe will finally be giving Ukraine the tanks it wants. But does this mean the Leopard 2 could end up going toe-to-toe with Russia's latest and greatest, the T-14 Armata? And who would win if they did? One of the points being brought up in various circles due to the war in Ukraine is the relevancy of tanks on a modern battlefield. Once these fearsome machines ruled all the battlefield, but as the Ukrainian armed forces have proven thanks to Western anti-tank weapons, even the best tanks in the world are extremely vulnerable to simple infantry. Does that mean the tank is obsolete? Not quite. All it means is that tanks require more infantry support than ever before, and when it comes to destroying threats, nothing can stand up to the power of a tank. In short, in a fight, you don't really need a tank until you need a tank, because nothing else is going to get the job done like a tank. Germany seems likely to allow for the export of Leopard 2s to Ukraine in response to the nation's request for heavy combat systems. With unverified reports of a small number of T-14 tanks crossing the border into Ukraine, this means it's possible the Leopard will finally meet Russia's best in battle. If this happens, we'll finally see if the claims made about both tanks are true or just pure propaganda. The Leopard 2 entered development in the 1970s in response to improvements in Soviet armor design. Given that West Germany would be ground zero, figuratively and quite literally, for any war between NATO and the Soviet bloc, the Germans were very invested in developing the best battle tank they possibly could, and they did not miss the mark, with the Leopard 2 an upgrade over the Leopard 1 immediately becoming one of the best tanks in the world and a complete overmatch against Soviet opponents. Originally, West Germany cooperated with the United States in developing the MBT-70. The US does a lot of things right when it comes to military hardware, but it's never truly been at the top of the class when it comes to tanks. Plus, both nations had completely different requirements for a main battle tank, and when coupled with communications problems from the two design bureaus, the project was doomed to failure. West Germany pulled out of the program as costs piled up, and the US would pursue it alone, until eventually scrapping it and using the lessons it learned for the M1 Abrams. Instead, the German government looked at ways of upgrading the Leopard 1, with Porsche taking the lead in the effort. A study named Gilded Leopard concluded that multiple advanced technologies could be incorporated into the Leopard 1 design, with the new tank featuring an autoloader which would allow the use of heavier rounds, a coaxial autocannon, and an independent commander's periscope for situational awareness. Further improvements included a TV surveillance camera that could be extended on a mast, as well as improvements to the engine, armor, and transmission. One of the biggest changes the Germans implemented was the switch from a 105mm gun to a 120mm gun. This was in response to the developments in Soviet armor, and it prompted the Americans to do a similar switch with their XM1, the prototype of the Abrams. In 1976, the West Germans sent a Leopard 2 prototype to the US for inspection by American engineers. In comparison with the XM1, it was discovered that the two vehicles were comparable in firepower and mobility, but the XM1 had superior armor protection. However, this was only in relation to explosive charges. Against a kinetic energy penetrator, the Leopard 2 was nearly twice as well protected. The Leopard's engine was also more reliable and used less fuel and had a smaller heat signature, but it produced more noise. The engine also allowed the Leopard 2 to be quickly started up and shut down, as opposed to the XM1, which had a lengthy startup process and thus would be forced to idle during short pauses in combat. The Leopard 2 went into production shortly after the American tests, albeit with improved armor. Today, the latest Leopard 2 enjoys decades of upgrades, with additional armor on the front of the turret, the hull itself, and the side skirts. Figures are classified, but it's estimated that the Leopard 2 has the equivalent protection to 1,840 to 2,920 millimeters of armor versus kinetic energy projectiles, and 2,780 to 4,370 millimeters of armor versus chemical explosive rounds. The Leopard 2A6 improves this protection, with protection equivalent to 5,890 to 7,800 millimeters of armor versus kinetic penetrators, and 9,000 to 11,500 versus chemical explosive rounds. Improvement to the belly armor also affords it additional protection from enemy missiles and IEDs, lessons learned from the conflict in Iraq and Afghanistan. Spall liners inside the hull protect the crew from the deadly effects of spalling, which happens when a projectile hits armor and does not penetrate it, but instead causes it to fracture on the inside, sending razor-sharp shards of metal bouncing around the interior of the tank. This can kill the crew while leaving the tank largely undamaged. The use of slat armor and active protection measures also increase survivability against rocket-propelled grenades and anti-tank missiles. The interior of the Leopard 2 can be sealed, with the vehicle giving its crew 12 hours of life support. This allows the tank to operate on a nuclear battlefield. An automatic firefighting system triggers when the interior temperature rises above 180 degrees, but it can also be triggered via the driver. Tanks are nothing without a gun, and here the Leopard 2 shines. It features the Rheinmetall 120mm smoothbore gun with 27 rounds of ammunition. The tank also stores 15 additional rounds on the left side of the turret bustle and can be accessed via a secure door. A blow-off panel allows the ammunition to safely cook off without incinerating the crew, a failure overlooked in most Russian tanks. The Leopard 2 fires a variety of rounds, including the German DM-33 discarding Sabo anti-tank round, which can penetrate 960 millimeters of steel armor at a range of 2,000 meters. The new L-55 cannon being fitted on upgraded Leopard 2s has a longer barrel, and Germany has fielded an improved round which takes advantage of the bigger barrel with improved penetration. The new barrel can also potentially fire the Leopard anti-tank guided missile directly through the main gun, a feature found on some Russian tanks as well. The Leopard 2 builds on an excellent tank and improves it over time with various upgrade packages, but the T-14 is built from scratch to house new technologies. Could this be the game-winning advantage? The T-14 was born from the cancellation of the T-95 in 2010. Deciding that a brand new tank was needed to meet and exceed NATO threats, the T-14 was a revolutionary leap in tank design. Truly, this is a tank for the digital age. The T-14 immediately differs from the Leopard 2 by placing its crew of 3 inside an armored capsule in the hull itself. While in the Leopard, the commander sits in the turret, in the T-14 the crew all sit together side by side, leaving the turret completely unmanned and controlled remotely. This is already a significant improvement over the Leopard 2 as it reduces the vulnerability of the commander. The tank's armor is made of a brand new steel developed by Russian scientists and given the codename 44S SVSH. The steel allegedly has extremely high durability and is able to withstand extreme temperatures without deformation. It also has the added advantage of being 15% lighter than the steel used in previous tank models. The hull is also covered with a new composite armor that includes a classified ceramic layer, but the most revolutionary feature is on the inclusion of explosive reactive armor into the base design itself, rather than being added on later in the form of bricks. The Malachit dual explosive reactive armor protects the front, sides, and top from RPGs and anti-tank missiles. Modern tanks need an active protection measure though, and the T-14 features the Afghanit Active Protection System. APS comes in two forms, hard and soft kill versions. Hard kill systems try to destroy or deform incoming munitions with their own, while soft kill systems try to interfere with the guidance or electronics of an incoming munition, such as with laser dazzlers. The Afghanit system incorporates both, a world first, and uses millimeter wave radar to target both incoming kinetic energy penetrators and tandem charge weapons such as the American Javelin. While this system allegedly protects the tank on all sides, it's not been able to intercept top attack munitions like the Javelin. Independent analysis believes the system works with 4 sensor panels mounted on each of the tank's sides, with a possible 5th on the turret. These hide an active electronically scanned array radar which tracks incoming projectiles. The system is able to destroy projectiles such as artillery shells or unguided rockets while using its soft kill capabilities to interfere with the guidance system of anti-tank guided missiles. The system is believed to be effective against any modern 3rd and 4th generation anti-tank system, while the Russians claim that it can even protect from depleted uranium kinetic penetrators such as those used by American tanks. This is a claim met with much skepticism, mostly because it was said by a Russian official, but also because the active penetration system's fragmentation charge would be easily pushed out of the way by an ultra-dense projectile traveling many times faster than the speed of sound. At best, it could push it slightly off course, which just means it would ruin the tank's day in a slightly different area than where it was initially aimed. The Russian MOD, which we've found out totally never lies, claims the system has successfully defeated uranium projectiles traveling at 2 kilometers a second. This has not been independently verified. The tank's manufacturer has also claimed the T-14 is invisible to radar and infrared detection due to the use of radar-absorbing paint and the placement of heat-generating components deep within the hull itself. The shape of the turret also helps it reduce the radar and thermal heat signature, in essence making the Armata a stealthy vehicle. Both Russians and American experts have called BS on these claims, mostly because a Russian official said it, and because Russia has not fielded a single truly stealth platform to date. If Russia had developed a wonder radar-defeating paint, then its pilots wouldn't be terrified of flying their planes on the front lines in Ukraine. The tank is equipped with a 125mm smoothbore cannon, allowing it to fire the Vacuum 1 discarded Sabo fin-stabilized round. Details remain classified, but this 900mm long projectile is believed to use depleted uranium and can penetrate 1,000mm of armor at 2,000 meters. Following Russian tradition, the cannon can also fire the 9M119M1 Invar M anti-tank guided missile with a range of up to 5 kilometers. It can even use the new 3UBK-21 Sprinter ATGM with a range increase of up to 12 kilometers. So, which tank would win in a one-on-one fight? We've given the T-14 a lot of crap in the past, and with good reason. The tank broke down during rehearsals for the 2015 Moscow Victory Day parade and has yet to enter serial production. The Russians have a rich history of allowing their mouths to write checks their defense budget can't cash, or just outright lying about capabilities. However, the T-14 is considered by many foreign experts as the real deal. Russia has historically known it would need to win a war it fought against NATO on the ground, as it's completely outmatched both in the air and at the sea. The T-14 is a revolutionary tank, built for future wars, and the inclusion of an automated turret and an armored crew capsule is an obvious advantage over the Leopard 2. Both tanks are exceptionally well protected against chemical explosive rounds. The real question is how they perform against modern kinetic threats. The T-14 is at an advantage here, having been designed from the ground up with an armored crew capsule. Remote control technology allows the tank to operate without the commander being exposed and vulnerable in the turret, further increasing survivability. The Leopard 2's age is also a factor here, as the tank was not designed with the modern threat environment in mind, while the T-14 was. From the side, the Leopard is likely to have less survivability than the T-14. However, only the German government and some foreign buyers are privy to the capabilities of new armor upgrade packages, so it's impossible to tell just how well the Leopard would fare against the very intimidating Vacuum 1 and Vacuum 2 rounds. Rheinmetall claims its armor can defeat up to 1 meter-long kinetic energy projectiles, but then again, this remains completely untested in combat. The refusal by the German government to use depleted uranium kinetic penetrators is also a major issue here when facing modern tank armor. While current tungsten penetrators are more than capable of doing the job, it does hint that the Leopard 2's maximum engagement distance against the T-14 is going to be well under what is advertised. Given that the bulk of these two tank systems remain highly classified, it's almost impossible to have a realistic discussion on which tank would beat which. However, we do know that generally the West enjoys better electronics than the Russians, which means the Leopard 2 would likely see the T-14 first. Tall tales from the manufacturer of being invisible to thermal imaging aside. The Leopard 2 probably has a better fire control system, allowing for more accurate shooting on the move. Ultimately, it does seem as if the Leopard 2 is not quite as optimized to defeat kinetic energy threats as the T-14, which gives the T-14 an advantage. However, we can be pretty confident in the claims of the Leopard 2's capabilities, given that the tank has seen huge success in the export market, meaning that the rest of Europe is pretty vigorously testing these claims. Regarding the T-14, we only have the Russians' word on it, and as we've mentioned previously, Russian officials lie as often and as easily as they breathe. So, who would win in a fight between the Leopard 2 and the T-14 Armata? Well, right now the Leopard 2 would absolutely crush the T-14, mostly because there's over 2,000 of it in army stocks across Europe, while there's an estimated 14 or so T-14 Armatas in existence. If Russian claims about the tank are true, however, the Leopard might find itself in a slightly uphill battle against the T-14 in a one-on-one engagement. Now go check out why Putin is scared to deploy the T-14 Armata tank in Ukraine, or click this other video instead.